The presenting sponsor of Rates and Barrels is Topps.com and Topps Project 70. Topps is celebrating the 70th anniversary of its very first baseball card design with a new program that pushes boundaries while paying homage to the company's heritage. Project 70 has brought together creators of all kinds for this extraordinary set. Graphic designers, tattoo and graffiti artists, animators, illustrators, painters, and even a jeweler make up the artist roster, which includes names like Snoop Dogg, Action Bronson, Ben Baller, Jeff Staple, Tyson Beck, Alex Pardee, and more. Each artist will select their own MLB players and Topps designs from any year to craft a unique story. Ever wanted to know what Aaron Judge would look like in a 1952 Topps design? Or how about Fernando Tatis Jr. in a classic template from the 1990s? 3 new cards launch daily all year long on Topps.com and are only available for 70 hours before they're gone for good. While you're there, be on the lookout for special cards. Head to Topps.com to learn more about Project 70 and to check out which cards are live right now. Welcome to Rates and Barrels, presented by Topps. Check out Topps Project 70, celebrating 70 years of Topps baseball cards. Derek Van Riper back from the long drive down I-80. Yes, I'm in my new place. It is not furnished or decorated, so I'm using a door to add texture to my shot. If you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, get notified every time we have an episode go live. Eno and I have had a chance to hang out already, which is awesome. So I've got one set of beers in with Eno already in the 3.5 days that I've been here. So I feel like I'm living my best West Coast life so far.
That's right. I panicked at the last minute and almost brought a box of See's chocolates that we had eaten a couple out of and tried to put the tape back on and be like, here's a housewarming gift. And I don't know why it looks like it's been gone into. And my wife, thank God, was like, no, dude, you're bringing beers. It's okay.
Well, you did leave a bottle opener here, so I'll consider that a housewarming gift, at least until I return, even if it's only on loan at this point. But for anybody out there who's
red Solo cups,
yeah, I got 4 or 5 Solo cups out of the deal too. For anybody out there who's ever moved even a little far away from where they used to live, you don't have to even go cross country. When you move far enough away where you don't bring all of your things with you, or if your things are maybe delayed in getting to you, you put them in a pod or a box or whatever. You go through this phase, and you're right in the beginning of it right now. It's about 2 to 3 weeks where every time you go to do something, you can't complete the task without being really creative. Yeah, you just can't. And the smartest things that I've purchased so far are 2 camping chairs and a 4-foot folding table from Costco, which is a workstation. It is a dining room table. It is a drinking beer table. It is patio chairs. I mean, it's extremely versatile for like $100, like 3 pieces that get you a very long way until you get all those other little pieces back in place.
And what I really like about it too is that they'll have completely different uses later on in your life. You don't want to buy something that then you have to get rid of, later. But it's like, for now, it's our dining room set.
Right.
Later, it'll be our camping set.
Yeah, the desk shows up on Thursday, so once the desk gets here, we'll take one of the functions of the table away. I won't have to move it in and out of the office every time I do a recording, which is
that's exciting.
It's a small price to pay, but that's my best tip. Actually buy some things that you can use on your patio that also work indoors, because you will find them to be incredibly useful if you don't have all your things. Also, pack a better small kitchen box than we did, because we tried to anticipate our own needs, but you tend to forget things like, a spatula. We tried to make scrambled eggs the first morning we were here. There was nothing to stir them with. So that was a problem. You can, of course, scramble the eggs with a fork in a plastic cup. So that gets you part of the way there. But you can't really do anything with a fork in the pan. So to make coffee today, I have a saucepan.
Living your best bachelor life.
Well, yeah, it's creative problem solving. To make coffee today, I had to boil water in a saucepan because I don't have a kettle right now, right? I didn't bring a coffee maker with me. I use a French press, so I have a 3-quart saucepan, which also cooked our noodles in it last night. I'm starting to think that minimalism, if you wanted to learn how to move more effectively, you should read and listen to podcasts about minimalism before you move, because it will set you on the right path to having the right things in the car or in whatever little bit of space you have.
Oh, don't be like us. We got married and had kids, and all those are gift giving opportunities. So the family has been giving us gifts, and we've been in this house for long enough now that if we ever move out of here, it'll take like 3 trucks. We got a basement. Like, everybody in California has a basement. We have a basement, and it is full.
You do have a lot of things. I say that in a very kind way. You were nice enough to let us stay with you a few weeks ago when we were here looking for places to live. And thinking about my own move and being in your home, I was like, holy crap, I don't think Eno's moving for a while. And
my mom, bless her heart, came here and dropped 12 boxes of books one day.
12 boxes of books, that's about 1/3 of the possessions that I put in that pod that's coming across the country. So, yeah.
And then she recently admitted, well, they're not all that good. You could get rid of some. And I'm like, you could have gotten rid of some.
Well, she's giving you the option. She didn't want to get rid of the good books that you would have enjoyed. So, she did you a favor by letting you decide which books that you'd like to keep. And which ones you'd like to get rid of.
I got to start reading.
Yeah, so thank you to the many of you who've reached out and welcomed me to the Bay Area or sent tips for places to go, breweries, restaurants, places to see. We're new to this area by 2,000 miles. The drive across the country, a little scary in parts, a little fun in parts. So that took 4.5 days. So a lot of adventures along the way. But happy to be back.
Sorry to hear about your running into the fires there.
Oh, yeah, that was my first experience being near the wildfires. And obviously that's a part of life in California. But yes, like ash coming down through the air out of the sky is very bizarre, and low air quality, definitely a concern. But on this episode, lots of great questions have been piling up over the last week, so we're going to answer as many of those as we possibly can. We got some questions about max exit velocity. There's some new research related to that, kind of looking at barrels and things that are more predictive, so we'll get into that as well. Some differences between hard hit rates in different places, team performances against particular pitches, a lot of great questions, so I just wanted to take some time today and plow through those as best we can. Let's start with this max exit velocity question because there's a few related topics right up front. Matt writes, just the theme music for the show each week gets me hyped. Had a question about 2 minor league max exit velocities I've seen. Jason Dominguez with a 109 mile per hour ground out the other night, and Jordan Walker earlier in the season hit a grounder at over 114 miles per hour. His question is it less impressive if a player hits the ball that hard on the ground? Do we need to see a max exit velocity at a higher launch angle to make it more believable? Hope that makes sense. Thanks, guys. Matt from Reno, which actually was one of my stops. I didn't cross paths with Matt, but that was one of the final stops on my tour to California.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because the original research for max exit velo that I go back to so often is Rob Arthur's piece on The Athletic, where he says that one batted ball can change projections going forward, and that has no launch angle information attached to it. So he basically says if the guy can hit 114, that is meaningful, and that will change his projections going forward. But there has been some refining of this recently. There's a researcher named Glenn Healy at UC Irvine, and he was working with Xiuan Zhao. And they looked at the predictive quality. So just the predictive quality of like how, if a person hits a certain ball in a certain area, how often is he going to continue to do so? Right. And the map and you gotta look this up. It's going to be a little hard for me to describe, but I'll describe it. But you could look it up. The Healy is spelled Healey, and I tweeted about this over the weekend, so you'll be able to find my tweet. And there's a link to the article, but also a map, and it looks a lot like the barrels map. So basically, the green parts of the map are the ones that predict themselves well. And the greenest part of the map is at 108 degrees, like amazingly, which was the cutoff that Rob Arthur picked. And 108 degrees from, and there's launch angle information in this one, from about -10 to 30. So, in that band, yes, Matt is correct. It is more meaningful to hit it between -10 and 30. And I think part of it is this. I think it's still meaningful, and this is a little bit anecdotal, me sort of trying to make sense of it, but I think if the guy hits like a -30-degree launch angle like Worm Burner at 120, there might be a little bit of selection bias in that. So it's like if he continues to hit 120 but straight into the ground, he's not going to be a good baseball player. And so he's not going to get a lot of chances to continually hit it right and straight into the ground. Except when you hit 120, you do get more chances, and then hopefully you iron it out. And so Giancarlo Stanton has hit 120. His hardest hits have actually been negative launch angle, like into the ground. I think when he hit like 122 or something, it was straight into the ground. But he doesn't do that a lot. And so it's not predictive of itself. You know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't do the 122 straight in the ground. He didn't do that a lot. So it's not predictive of himself. However, it does mean that he can hit the ball 120, and the 120s at 10 degrees that he hits a lot are predictive. So if that made any sense. But generally what I would say is it's better to see it in that sort of -10 to 30 range. But 108 is kind of still a key number there. And there's still a lot to be learned from just knowing the guy can hit the ball that hard.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think of players that came into the league with low launch angles, like Vlad Jr. is probably one of the more obvious examples. It wasn't that he was just pounding the ball into the ground constantly, but he wasn't lifting it enough, I think is the way I would describe him. I think the more extreme examples from the last decade or so that we've talked about a few times, Eric Hosmer and Ryan Zimmerman. Those were guys that were hitting the ball pretty hard, pretty consistently, but on the ground way too much. And with Zimmerman, I think he worked with, was it Kevin Long, who was the hitting coach at the time? I think Daniel Murphy was one of his teammates. He made some adjustments to his swing and started to tap into more of that raw power. I guess the other way to ask the question that Matt asked is a hard hit, a very hard hit ground ball still indicative of raw power? And the way we've been thinking about raw power lately is it's not the same as game power for obvious reasons. Like game power, as you've said before, is more of the function of barreling the ball. Raw power is just hitting it hard and maybe hitting it too low or too high. So does this fall into that latter category?
Yeah, I think if I saw a guy hit a grounder at 114, I would say he has tremendous raw power. And there would still be that question of unlocking. I think Yandy Diaz is a guy who never really unlocked it. He still hits the ball really hard, but he hits it low on the ground. He, had like maybe a 3-month stretch where he kind of lifted it. And that can have something to do with pitch selection, mechanics, even probably some hit tool is involved in there. But you can kind of see some of this in action. So, for example, I was being asked on Twitter, I think in this thread where I pointed out. So Brian Hayes, I think this is personally, I think this is about the best time to try and acquire him. I think that people have doubts about his power upside. His barrel number is not amazing. He didn't have great power all the way up and down the minors. And so now it looks like 2020 is the outlier. But I would say that, first of all, the floor is so high. It's nice to acquire somebody like this that has a good strikeout rate, has a good walk rate, has great defense, and will steal some bases. You know what I mean? Like worst case scenario, he's like a 280, 2010 guy. That's pretty awesome. That's really useful. And then best case scenario, he taps into the power. And here's my example coming off of this. If you actually look at this heat map of what's predictive, and you look at Brian Hayes's max exit velos, first of all, he has this year 5 balls hit over 108, 7 balls hit over 108. So He already has that sort of max exit velo stuff. Now you look up and down, and the hardest hit balls he's hit, 111 was minus 14 degrees. However, if you look at where that sits on this predictability sheet, it actually is not a very predictive ball because he hit it so far into the ground. What you do see when you see this is that the 109s that he hit at 14 degrees, he hit 3 or 4 balls at 109 at 14 degrees, and that's right in the middle of the brightest, most predictive spot in this. So basically what I'm saying is, I know I'm talking about 3 balls, but it is amazing how powerful 3 balls can be in the context of predicting future batted balls. It's something that blows away everybody who does research on this. I was talking to Alex Chamberlain about this. I was talking back and forth with Glenn Healy about this. Rob Arthur has a piece that says 1 batted ball can make a difference. The percentage of batted balls that are meaningful is actually really low, but when you hit those, it's really meaningful. You know what I mean? It's so strange. So what I'm saying is, because Ke'Bryan Hayes hit 3 balls at 14-degree launch angle and 109 exit velocity, I think he has real power. And I know that sounds kind of ridiculous, and it's definitely a stat nerd thing to say, but I think it's true. And so I would acquire a Ke'Bryan Hayes right now, and I think it's not that meaningful that his 111 was at minus 14 degrees.
Do you think it's fair to say that this is a little bit counterintuitive because statistically we're talking about a number of events that is generally not statistically relevant?
Oh yeah, there's a
That's
tiny
the problem,
sample size,
right? Like
sure.
it goes directly against the way most things tend to work.
Yeah, and so I understand anybody who wants to say, well, all right, I want to wait for more research. I don't know if I believe this. And, we are still kind of at the beginning. I mean, we're only sort of, we're not even 10 years into StatCast, and if you think about it, like that stuff research that I'm doing, that started in 2008. So, and this year we had 3 revisions of the stuff metric, you know what I mean? So it's yes, we could find out more in the future, but this piece is pretty rock solid. Glenn Healy is really well respected. He has his own stuff number. And he did it in the computer science division at UC Irvine. It's a like a publicly vetted research piece, like it's in a journal. So it's just, I think, what I think it is I think that what happens at that moment when you hit a ball 109 at 14 degrees or whatever is you demonstrate the ability to do that. You know what I mean?
Right. On a micro level, it's showing that you own a standout skill.
Yeah. Remember, it's like the Ron Chandler thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where once you demonstrate a skill, you own it. And it might not be true. Like you think of maybe these guys who throw no hitters that aren't very good.
Right.
Yeah, there are standout results based. Sometimes people are just hot and they aren't that good. However, there are skills okay, for example, if you throw a ball 105, there's a guy in the Giants organization that just threw a ball 105. If you throw a ball 105, that means a ton. You threw a ball 105. That means you could throw the ball 105 again. And it also means you could sit 103.
There, of course, are other questions that go along with it. But yes, that is
like with Ke'Bryan Hayes. Well, you hit the ball 109. What angles are going to be in the future and this and that. But there are guys. If you look around, there are guys who have 45% ground ball rates that also hit 25 homers because they hit the ball hard. So that's why I think if you do 109 at 14 degrees, you've done something. That is something meaningful. I mean, it's even more meaningful if it's 115 or whatever. But I think Ke'Bryan Hayes has real power, and that's what I see when I look at this map. Is oh crap, 108 was a really big deal. Rob Arthur was completely right. This totally backs up Rob Arthur's claim, because up and down 108 from -10 to 30 degrees is just the big, bright, blinding green light on this map. And there's a bit of a box around it. So like you could say 107 to 115 from -10 to 30, but that's the most important information. So Max Bay, who I work with on the stuff thing, he created an extra base hit stat. We can maybe share the Google Doc in our show notes or something, but it's basically based on this idea that like the number of balls that are truly predictive is actually smaller than barrels. Barrels are the most predictive overall stat that we have in terms of power, but the really predictive balls are even smaller than barrels. So basically you can actually become more predictive than barrels by cutting off a smaller piece. That's really goes against what my initial thought about barrels and stuff like that. But he made a smaller, more predictive barrels, basically. Buxton, number 1, baby. Shohei, number 2. Tatis, number 3. Tyler O'Neill, number 4. Right there by Vlad, Acuna Jr., Judge, Harper, Salvador Perez. A couple other top guys that are pretty impressive. Joey Votto, 17th. Evan Longoria, 18th. The old man brigade. Rhys Hoskins ahead of Pete Alonso, but right there at 23-24. Alex Kirilloff. This is what we're talking about with like the Cabrian Hayes thing. Does Alex Kirilloff have plus power? Does he have real power, or does he have like 18 homer power? I don't know. When I see him on this thing, right next to Manny Machado and Pete Alonso, I say this dude has real power.
Yeah, I think even the more public-facing barrel numbers and exit velos on Kirilloff point to a guy with well above average power. I think he's probably a 30 to 35 home run guy at his peak, and more of like an easy 20 to 25 guy in a typical season. So I'm definitely in on Kirilloff in the long run.
Yeah, other names that pop for me are Haas, Eric Haas, right there with Austin Riley and Juan Soto. Avisail Garcia is just when he's not catching balls, or when he's not catching, whatever. When he's not in the field, he's great. Who else is up here that's interesting? Darren Roof, 44th, right next to Jan Gomes, 45. In fact, Jan Gomes is I picked him up in AL Labor. If you're looking for a second catcher or a fill-in catcher, and he's been dropped because he doesn't seem like he's the starter in Oakland, from the usage, from what I see, from what I've talked to and to people around Oakland, he's not necessarily like the starting catcher, but it's going to be a little bit more like 50-50. And he's going to get DH at bats. Like he might be the starting DH against left-handers, which
Not
means
bad.
he's going to get really close to 50-50. So he's an interesting pickup for people if they need a catcher.
So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Be sure to check out the full thread because it's very detailed. I still need to dig into it more myself. As you can imagine, the excess reading time has not been where I'd like it to be over the last few days, but some really exciting stuff there. And I'm all in on Cabrian Hayes as a buy low. Even without this, just on principle, there are other reasons to like him. He's a great defender at third base on a rebuilding team. He's going to be in the middle third of the order, and he's always had a good hit tool. Those reasons are also all good reasons to go after Hayes.
Yeah, he showed on our Winker list for those reasons. I mean, the Winker list for me is, great hit tool, great strikeout rate, gonna play, and reasons to believe they could increase their barrel rate or increase their power somehow.
Yeah, so really interesting stuff there. Thanks for writing about that, Matt. I'm glad it kind of was in line with some things that Eno had seen recently from the research community. By the way, is it research or is it research? This is a problem I have encountered recently in my life. I'd never heard research until I think it was Steph's last lab group, and I can't get a clear answer on this. That almost seems like the BBC way to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's got to be regional. That sounds sort of Englishy.
Yeah.
Well, I remember when I was in England, the one that just really got me was innovative.
Oh, geez. Yeah, I wouldn't have seen that one coming at all.
That one blew me out of left field. Like, what did they just? Oh, innovative. I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's research for me, but
yeah, I've always said research. So if you are in academia and we are wrong, please drop us a line on Twitter. He's at Saris. I'm at Derek Van Riper. Rates and Barrels at theathletic.com, of course, is a great way to reach us. The right outfit can bring out something special in us. And with Indochino, creating your best look yet could be more affordable than you think. And it may have been a while since the last time you had an excuse to dress up, but whenever that next chance is, make the absolute most of it. Ordering online with Indochino is easy. Indochino offers completely custom-fitted suits, shirts, casual wear, and more at surprisingly affordable prices. Every piece is made to your exact measurements, and you can customize every detail. Choose everything about your suit from the fabric, lapel, monogram, and statement linings, and you can make a suit that fits you and your style perfectly. And the best part, Indochino's suits start at just $399 with all customizations included. Indochino is now open at select Nordstrom stores, giving you even more ways to get great fitting, personalized clothing. Find your nearest location at Indochino.com. Right now, you can get $50 off any purchase of $399 or more by using the code AthleticMLB at checkout. That's $50 off a purchase of $399 or more at INDOCHINO.com with the promo code AthleticMLB. Today's episode of Rates and Barrels is sponsored by the NBA and their That's Game campaign. That's Game encapsulates the league's goals of advancing the game of basketball, growing the community, and impacting culture. The campaign celebrates the NBA, its players, and fans across the past, present, and future as the NBA soon approaches its 75th anniversary season. That's Game highlights pivotal moments on court and beyond, from iconic plays in arena to the impact players have in the community. NBA 75th will be a continuation of the That's Game campaign. The campaign will honor the past, present, and future of the NBA across the court, community, and culture. And like in the NBA Finals, when the Bucks had their backs against the wall, Drew Holiday made a steal, pushed the break, threw that alley-oop to Giannis for an iconic slam. It sealed Game 5 and eventually a Bucks championship. That's the NBA. That's Game. This is more than just basketball. It's what connects us all and keeps us coming back for more. That's the NBA. That's Game. All right, let's get to a few other questions here. Lots of great ones, as I mentioned up top. I want to start with a question from Casey about hard hit rates, seeing some differences on Fangraphs versus StatCast. In this case, Casey was looking at Tukey Toussaint's hard hit rate on the two sites and noticed a difference of about 18 percentage points. Is there one of those sites that you prefer over the other? And could you explain the differences between those two sources?
Yeah, this is like a industry thing. It's like two businesses. This is kind of, I guess, why sometimes people say, "Oh, there's three wars," so it's bull BS. I kind of wish there was one hard hit. I'll have to admit, I kind of wish there was one war. I just like it would make it a lot easier to know what we're talking about because, but. Whatever. I respect the right of each war holder to have a slightly different methodology. So that's fine. It's no big deal. Well, the difference is hard hit that you're looking at. There is actually, now that StatCast is on Fangraphs, there will be two hard hits on Tukey's page on Fangraphs. So if you look at the StatCast area, he's got the 52.5% hard hit. And then if you look at a thing called batted ball, there's a hard percentage that's 37.7% right now. That's BIS. So I think most of the whole section here that's called batted ball on Fangraphs is from Baseball Info Solutions. So those are stringers. Those are human beings that are watching the game and deciding that's pulled. That's center. That's oppo. That's a pop up. That's a line drive. That's softly hit, medium hit, and hard hit. And so generally, I think that's inferior to StatCast. The one thing that's nice about it is that it goes back a long way, And so it does tell us a little bit about pre-StatCast players. But a human, when BIS, when they look, here's what the thing says. The calculation is made based on hang time, location, and general trajectory. So you're asking a human being to do that. To kind of be like, okay, well, that was in the air for 2.2 seconds, and it landed in the outfield, so that was hard hit.
I'm a little torn here though, because I think the hard hit on Baseball Savant and StatCast is just 95 plus, no matter what you do with it. And we were just talking about ground balls, right? If you're a pitcher and you're giving up 95 plus mile per hour average exit velocities on the ground, less of a concern if you're doing it in the air. So if the human doing the work at Baseball Info Solutions takes the 95 plus on the ground and pushes that into the medium bucket instead of leaving it in the hard hit bucket, I think that might be a little bit helpful, but I think you are introducing some human error or just some subjectivity to something that could be much more objective if you added a few more ways to measure it, right? If you look at more specific information about a batted ball type, it's almost like what they're trying to do at Baseball Info Solutions should be done by a computer, and then we'd be in a better spot. The best of both worlds would be kind of merging the two together.
Yeah, and just, for me, I don't know how much value there is here. I just want to, let's see here. I'm doing the hard hit leaders, qualified pitchers last year, 2020. I don't see a reason to fade these pitchers. Let me just give them to you. Number 1, Framber Valdez. Number 2, Garrett Cole. Number 3, Patrick Corbin. Okay, well, that's a reason to fade him, but there's a lot of other reasons to fade him, right? Declining fastball velo, declining strikeout rate, 2 pitches. I mean, there was a lot of reasons to fade him that didn't have anything to do with the hard hit. Shane Bieber 4, Herman Marquez 5. Is this a list of good pitchers or bad pitchers?
Yeah, I mean, I see, and I think the way I'm looking at it right now from last season, I've got it sorted where Marco Gonzalez was the worst in the league, the highest hard hit rate allowed. Garrett Cole was in the top 6.
Yeah, I've got it with the qualified thing on. So
so if you turn that off, you find some other. Yu Darvish is 12th. I mean, I would not look at this and just, especially in the shortened season, but in general, I would not look at this and say you can't draft a guy who's bad in this particular category.
And I think especially in a short sample, we've talked about this before. I think it just has to do with we've shown that pitchers have some control over launch angle. We haven't really shown that they have much control over exit velocity. And I think that has to do with the fact that the pitcher's command is not as good as people think. So a pitcher can generally throw high in the zone or generally throw low in the zone, and that can change the launch angle of what's being hit, right? But they also miss their spots by an average of, the research said 10 to 13 inches is the average. I'm being kinder than the research because the research had some flaws in it, but I'd say 6 to 8 inches probably is an average, right? So let's say you are primo command guy and you only miss 4 to 6 inches. There are times when you're going to aim for the black, miss by 4 or 6 inches, and it's right in the happy zone, right? So even guys with good command will give up hard hits. I think Shane, it's not even a list of people with bad command, because Jose Barrios has good command. He's on this list of hard hit. Shane Bieber has good command. He's on this list of hard hit. Aaron Nola has great command, and he's on this list of hard hit.
Yeah, I just think there are some guys who are more susceptible to yielding hard contact when they miss because of either their mix of pitches or maybe a lack of premium velocity, or
maybe they live in the zone. Yes, it could be a stuff thing. It could be that they live in the zone. Yeah, there's a lot of different things. I think I'm not saying that this is like a fait accompli and we know everything there is to know. They're definitely, like Andrew Haney, for example, rates well by stuff, rates well by command. His K- BB is good. His Sierra and FIP are always good, and he underperforms those numbers every year, and he gives up really hard hit homers. And is it because he shows the ball, or is it because his fastball's actually got interesting characteristics? It's not a terrible fastball, but is there something that about his fastball that gives up homers? There's definitely almost enough sample now with Haney to be like, seems like he gives up hard contact.
Right. He owns that skill or fails to own that skill.
Right. but I can't, it's not, I can't really tell exactly what it is. It's not like he gives up a terrible barrel rate either. It's just a lot of smoked balls. So I don't know.
Well, thank you for the question, Casey. Hopefully that breakdown was helpful. I think limited value in using that overall, but at least understanding how those are different might be helpful. If I had to pick a lane, I'd probably just use the StatCast one because of the consistency, but I wouldn't want to rely too heavily on that for a bunch of different reasons. Let's get to a question here about team performances against a particular pitch. And this question came from Robert. I think it was inspired by Blake Snell's recent good outing against the D-backs, 13 Ks there. Threw his slider 48% of the time, had a lot of success in that outing. Robert tried to do some research and was looking at the weighted slider runs per 100 pitches. And Arizona happened to have the worst performance in that category. So is it possible to match or to measure the effectiveness of a team against a particular pitch type?
I mean, every bone in my body is saying no. But just because, so just to tell you what that stat is, I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, basically that stat takes the run environment before, or basically takes a look at what's happening in the game before that ball is put in play or swung on and missed or whatever, and then looks what's going on in the game after and gives that pitch the credit, right? So you could be whiffing on sliders, you could be hitting over the top of them into ground balls and creating outs, whatever it is. The game is worse after. So it's not that great for if you're looking at a single pitcher, because it always said that, like, for example, R.A. Dickey's fastball was amazing pitch. Well, that was only because he threw like 10 a game and nobody was ready for it because they were sitting on the 80-mile-an-hour curveball. I mean, right. Knuckleball. It was
a changeup, basically.
It was a changeup. So that it lies on that level. Now, okay, now we're leaving the pitcher behind. We're looking at a team. Here's where there's enough where I'm like, well, here's some ways that a team could be bad at sliders, for example. One, they do not have really great coaching and preparation. So, and that's actually sort of separate there. Coaching, I could see, like, for example, the Giants out here use 3 L screens during batting practice. They'll have a pitching machine behind one, and they'll have humans behind the other, and they'll mimic different arm slots, different pitch types, and do fastball off seed, and like just basically try to screw with the batter as much as possible to prepare them for the game that day. Not very many other teams do that. Also, downstairs, I was told that I would lose my poop if I was allowed to go downstairs and look at what their pitching machine could do. They have installed some sort of new pitching machine. No one will tell me exactly what it does in San Francisco, but I'm sure, just guessing, I bet you it has some sort of video component where it kind of there's like a fake pitcher winding up to release the ball. That's been done before. I bet you it's one of the best spin machines, like can spin sliders like nobody's business. And then it's got to have high velo. So it's all 3 of these things. Maybe there's some other aspect of it that I'm not anticipating that makes it great. So they work on that, and they work on the 3L screens in batting practice. And then there's preparation, which is really great information given to their hitters, catered to each hitter's style, that really gets them ready for the game. In fact, I heard that now we're talking about Arizona versus the Giants. I heard that the Giants were doing the 3L screen thing in Arizona, and by the end of the series, when they were when they noticed that Arizona didn't take, like, because the Giants go first, Arizona didn't take it down. They left the 3L screens out there.
for the last day of the series, they were like, "Hey, let's try this," because they probably had some people watching what was happening in the field and said, "Wow, that's a good idea. We could do that."
Guess what happened like 2 weeks later?
They hit.
All the Arizona coaches got fired. All the Arizona
no.
hitting coaches got fired. So I get just a little bit of a sort of whiff of we're just going to copy this because we're a little bit desperate here right now. And we don't know exactly what they're doing, but we're just going to copy it. I've heard this before from other things. You might have heard a story on here about batting stances in the Astros, but
oh geez, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes people just copy each other. They don't even know why they're copying. But in any case, then the last part that I just want to say is scouting and acquisition. So maybe you scout and acquire a certain type of player that has a weakness against a certain pitch type, because maybe you say, oh, we just love guys who hit fastballs really well. Maybe those guys, some of them just don't hit sliders that well, and you've acquired a bunch of guys who can knock the snot out of fastball but have some trouble against sliders. So you could have a scouting bias. You could have a preparation and a coaching bias. So I guess it's possible that a team could be bad against a certain pitch type. I don't think it's probable because you're talking about like 15 different batters, right?
It'd be pretty weird. And I think that was, I kind of truncated the email just to get to the main point. I mean, Robert was wondering about each individual player in a lineup will have specific strengths and weaknesses against certain pitches.
Exactly.
Is it possible to look at the sum or the average of the parts? It might not be helpful to look at the sum or the average of the part because you're scouting you can scout everyone individually and attack them individually. But you could happen to have 5 or 6 hitters in the lineup on a given day who are bad against sliders, or a couple that are just bad against premium velocity or something. That's possible. But yeah, I'd be careful about trying to find a ton of value in this as well. I love what the Giants are doing. Every time it comes up, when you explain some things you've seen them doing that are really putting them at the forefront of coaching and development, it makes sense. It helps to explain something that coming into the season, we thought what happened last year was a fluke and that they were going to be, at best, the third best team in the NL West. I probably would have said Arizona was going to win more games than San Francisco back in March. Put that on the long list of things I've been wrong about in 2021. But when you have unexpected success or unexpected failure, you want to dig in more and understand why. And I think the why with the Giants is well thought out and compelling more often than not. It's just an organization that seems to get it and wants to continue to learn more and kind of push things in the right direction even further.
Yeah, I mean, just talking to their coaches, every time I talk to them, they say something that kind of blows my mind. They definitely went out and tried to acquire people who think hard on the game and are good at connecting with people. And then on top of that, Farhan is a waiver wire genius. I mean, this dude found Max Muncy, and Donovan Solano and Mike Jastrzemski, and these are all waiver claims.
Yeah.
Do you know how many
Useful
waiver
players.
claims? Do you know how many successful waiver claims GMs normally have in their lives? They probably have like 1 or 2 that they remember. And usually it's like, we remember when we claimed that one reliever and he ended up being good.
Yeah,
It's like Rule 5. Everyone's like,
was good.
Johan Santana. Yeah, Rule 5 matters. Johan Santana. You're like, yeah, Johan Santana. That's about it. There's like 2 guys from the Rule 5 over the last like 20 years, and everyone's always excited about it. I'm like, I don't care. I mean, good luck to these guys, but I don't know, man. It's a really low percentage play. But this guy, I think he's done a really good job. And I think like you can almost count like signing Tommy La Stella and guys like that as almost waiver-ish, because you're talking about $2-3 million signings too.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So a huge list of reasons why they're having success, but
and probably the Dodgers and Brewers are doing very similar things. I mean, first of all, Farhan was at the Dodgers, so like I think they're doing very similar things. I've heard the Dodgers a little bit more out there on VR, on virtual reality, but obviously the Brewers have some pretty good player development going too. So I'm not trying to say it's only the Giants, but it could be a thing that I think the lefty righty splits is meaningful, and the difficulty, and there was some stuff in this in the email too. The difficulty, and he was pointing this out, is that like the lineups change too. So doing anything on the team level ignores the goings and comings off the IL. guys who've been demoted, call ups, like all that stuff. And then if you try to cut it into smaller tidbits, it gets worse because now you're just looking at a lot of noise. So let's say you say lefty righty splits. That is pretty useful. That could tell you something about just the handedness of the team and basically. But what if they, like the Cubs? They brought this is the email I brought up the Cubs too, right?
It's another email, but it's very, very related. This email came from another Matt. Matt was wondering, with so many batters moved at the trade deadline, I was wondering how the starting pitcher streaming landscape has changed. I use the Fangraphs team splits tool plus Eno's command and stuff numbers when streaming starting pitching. Which teams do you think are now viable to stream left-handed pitchers or right-handed pitchers against? First team in general is obviously the Cubs. They're losing their best hitters. I mean, yeah, they gutted that lineup. So his question was, how bad do you think their offense will be now? Probably bottom 5. I mean, name 3 good hitters still in that lineup. Like Wilson Contreras and...
I got a share of Rafael Ortega, baby.
I came up on the waiver pod yesterday, and it was after we talked about Joe Adell. And I'm like, wow, those are 2 guys coming from very different places at very different points in their career. And
yeah, Ortega's like 29 or 30. Is he like super old?
Like, which one's going to help me more? So I think this is kind of part of a broader question, and it does tie into the last one. Like, you have lineups changing all the time. I think one thing we've done generally poorly in the season-long community, they do it really well in DFS, is accounting for the changes in opponent quality. When you take the best hitter out of a lineup, think of the Padres. Without Fernando Tatis Jr., when he's on the IL, that's not a lineup you fear, because even with him in it, they're above average, but they're not way above average. They're not a top 5 offense. They're more like in that 10 to 15 range. Without him, they're just a tick below average, probably overall. Then you start taking your shots, right? So you have all these situations like that. The trade deadline is just one of the big ones where teams can absolutely get gutted. But the Cubs weren't a team that you feared before, but now they're a team you'd seek out. Like, you would actively seek out streaming pitchers, guys you previously would not use against the Cubs. You absolutely will use against the Cubs during the final 2 months of the season.
Yeah. I guess I have a little bit of a weakness as an analyst, is I'm not super into DFS, and so I haven't looked at the sort of predictive quality of all these different splits you can look into. But I would have to say that my general thought is that you could almost do better, like kind of doing the blink assessment, where you're like, just look at the lineup. Right, and be like, "Oh, that's not a good line." That isn't that going to do you better than being like, "Well, in the last week, they've murdered, sliders from righties, and the guy that's coming in today throws a," you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard thing too is as you start to break things down even by month for teams that haven't changed as much, you could trick yourself into avoiding a matchup that's basically a string of good games put together or a string of bad games put together, right? Teams slump just like players slump. So you could say, oh, well, the Tigers in August are they're a league average offense. I should be more careful with them. It's like, no, you probably shouldn't be more careful with them.
Look at what Cal Quantrill
changed for them.
Did to them. Yeah. By the way, I sold Cal Quantrill for Clint Frazier and Devil's Rejects right after that start. So I mean, maybe I'll look dumb later, but I felt pretty good about that.
The August thing is kind of funny though, because if you look at the WRC plus by team, from the bottom up, Pirates dead last, Rangers second to last, Brewers third to last, Rockies fourth to last, and then Marlins rounding out the bottom 5. All teams that we've been picking on for most of the season. I think the Brewers are the ones surprised.
Mostly there. Teams I would stream against. I mean, Brewers away from home. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Alec Mills gets them today. But
it's not like Adames changes everything. I mean, Adames and Tellez have been good, but it's mostly about bringing them up from the bottom than making them a top offense.
Right. So if everything's clicking for them and they get Yelich back to being Yelich,
that's what they need to do. If they want to go far and just to do a real baseball little snippet there, if the Brewers want to go far, they need Christian to be like 90% Christian at least,
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's just going to be the reality for them, because if this is who he is and he's just like an okay player, then that whole lineup is just okay.
But I would say Pirates, Rangers, Brewers, Rockies, Marlins, Mariners against the working up from the bottom, Cleveland, The D-backs, the Reds are surprising. I don't think they're necessarily a soft streaming target. The Twins, I think they make sense because Buxton's been hurt. Donaldson's been hurt a lot. Nelson Cruz is gone.
I think Twins is a little bit dangerous though, and they're barrelers, man. They lead the league in barrels, and yeah, and you could get bad lineup news like right before, where it's like, do you think Donaldson's gonna be out, but then he's in or whatever, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, you could get burned by that, but that's just not the same Twins lineup that we thought it was going to be coming into the season because of a variety of different factors.
Buxton, Cruz, yeah.
Yeah, so I think you can mess with them, the Royals, the Cubs. I would just say the Twins and the Cubs are the two teams that probably fell the most at the deadline.
Yeah.
And because of injuries and other factors, whereas earlier in the year you were more careful with who you'd use against them. Now you don't have to be. So another spot, like it's been the refrain in this episode, be careful, because reading too much into these limited samples and splitting things out too much can lead you astray in some of these cases. And you don't want to make bad decisions that you think are good decisions rooted in data. So, all right. This episode of Rates and Barrels is brought to you by Rise, a science-based app that makes it easy to improve your sleep and to increase your daily energy. Did you know that it's normal to feel groggy when you wake up and sluggish in the afternoon? However, it is not normal to feel tired throughout the day. That's an indication you're carrying sleep debt, limiting your natural energy peaks and making your dips less productive. Every morning, Rise tells you how long you'll be groggy, when your peak focus times will be, and when you should start winding down for better sleep and more energy the next day. And look, moving is brutal. I slept in a different state every day for a week, and I'm trying to figure out how to adjust to Pacific time and all these changes around me, so I need something to get my sleep back on track. Rise helps you realize your potential with real results, real productivity, real performance, and real well-being. Go to risescience.com/rates and download the Rise app today to try it free for 7 days. Most Rise users feel the benefits in just 5 days. So try it today to learn more about your sleep and energy levels, plus feel better, all for free during the trial. Whether you want to become a morning person, be less exhausted during the day, or improve your productivity and daily energy, Rise is the power behind your next best day. That's risescience.com/rates to try the Rise app for free for the next 7 days. All right, let's get to one more question for today. This is a injury concern question from Perry. Perry writes, I've spent a good portion of the last 3 years waiting for Byron, Buxton, and Adalberto Mondesi to come back from the IL, and I'm wondering if I should just move on. I'm in a 30-team dynasty league and had the likes of Alex Kirilloff, Julio Rodriguez, George Valera, and Royce Lewis waiting in the wings. Should I try to get 50 cents on the dollar and let someone else worry about Mondesi and Buxton? Thanks for all the info and laughs, Perry. This is tough because it's a 30-team dynasty league. So replacement level when you lose a guy is really high. And then the penalty of taking 50 cents on the dollar when you trade players who could be as good as Buxton and Mondesi is really steep because, look, you're getting less than you should, and trying to replace them, trying to find quality on the wire is almost impossible. Unless you're going to win a championship this year by trading them for some rentals, I don't think you could really justify getting rid of either one of these guys right now, because Mondesi especially, his value might be at a 3-year low right now.
Yeah, and I just think that the psychology, there's a little bit of the psychology at play here, the recency bias. I think you need to take advantage of recency bias. Just like remember this moment and nurture it within you and hide it from people. And then once Buxton and Mondesi have a really good 3-week stretch to end the season, take part in the happiness, but remember that little kernel of doubt that you stored away, and then trade him. And it'll be harder because then you'll be like, oh, dude, Buxton came back and he smashed like 6 homers and stole 3 bases, and that's what everybody wants from him. And he's 27. But then remember this moment too. Like sort of store away this feeling so that you can trade him away later at closer to full value. I would say that both of them have done enough that I think long term you may want to trade them, because it's not a good sign when your GM says we're not sure he can be an everyday player, which is what Dayton Moore recently said about Adalberto Mondesi in public to
Weird,
reporters.
isn't it?
I mean, it's not nice. Maybe it's like a gauntlet he's throwing down, or he's like, "Come on, dude."
Is he trying to motivate him? Because that is not a way to
And he's
maximize value.
Yeah, he's not going to trade him away, I guess, after that. Like, he's not helping his trade value. And he's normally, I thought Moore was a guy that like tried to support, they paid their minor leaguers and they've been pretty supportive.
But could that have been posturing because the league knows that they probably want to trade Whit Merrifield this winter? Is having some kernel of doubt about Mondesi's playing time volume a way of trying to protect Merrifield's trade value? Because you got Bobby Witt Jr. coming up too. Like,
oh yeah, we could play all three of them because Mondesi's not really an everyday player,
right? And then everyone's like, oh, well, then we get to pay top dollar for Whit Merrifield. Like, that's how he thinks it's going to play out. And it's like, well, I'm pretty sure everybody else can evaluate those three players and see
on
that
their own.
You have motivations to get rid of the oldest one of the three.
I think there's less of these sort of galaxy brain 3D chess things than we want there to be. I was talking about a GM to somebody and being like, I don't think I'd ever work for that guy, and the executive said there were fewer heroes and villains in baseball than people want to think.
Really? There's just more regular people around the game than we assume?
Right. Yeah, I think so.
More Clark Kents.
So. Yeah, not maybe these guys, and we like narrative. We don't get full access. As writers, we try to give people access, but we ourselves don't have full access. And then whatever access we have is filtered down through the narratives that we put on the stuff that we get through our access. So you're never getting the full story of what an AJ Preller is like.
No, not unless
just to pull a name out of a hat.
Well, if you sat down with someone who's been in his inner circle before, or who is in his inner circle currently, and if you had some beers with that person, then you may get some actual unfiltered information.
And that's actually the sort of, you're describing the situation in which I got that sort of feedback. So
yeah, I mean,
not that it was about AJ Preller.
No, of course not. Why would it be? I'm still stuck on this pitching machine that you described in San Francisco, because I want Rates and Barrels field trips to become a thing now that it's possible. Like, we can get in the same vehicle and go to a place and check stuff out. But that's like getting access to the everlasting gobstopper machine. Like, that's really not going to happen, is it? Like, if I hold out hope that that's going to be our first field trip, I'm going to be waiting a very long time for that.
Do you know what the coach who was telling me about it said I should do? He said I should take a bucket of balls and throw them all over the field and go, "What the hell? Who did that?" And then go run down and look at it.
Well, if you need me to bail you out when you do that, if that's the route you want to go, I'll bail you out instead of
a way to
throwing
get
the balls.
An organization to hate you.
Yeah, I think being on the more friendly side with the Giants is probably the better long-term play. But I love that was suggested to you. Like, maybe that was that 3D chess? Was that some attempt to get you out of the Giants' orbit? Right. Just talk Eno into doing something ridiculous so we can ban him for life.
Just imagine the tweet from one of the other beat writers. Looks like Eno Saris is being kicked out of the park. There's a bucket of balls on the field. I can't tell what's going on here.
It would be very confusing and very exciting for anybody who was covering the game that day to see something like that unfold during batting practice. But if you got ideas for some Rates and Barrels field trips, drop us a line. He's at Eno Saris. I am at Derek Van Riper. You can subscribe to The Athletic for just $3.99 a month at theathletic.com/Rates and Barrels. Thank you to the many of you who have taken the time and supported the site over the years. And if you're thinking about doing it, now's a great time to get in, of course. We got the push to the playoffs. We got fantasy football stuff starting up as well if you play that. And
thank you to you for coming back.
Oh, yeah. Was it not fun having me gone?
It may have been for our listeners, but it was difficult for me.
I'd much rather be hosting this show than driving down I-80 with two hands firmly on the wheel, just like unsure of what's actually coming up next. There's parts of that drive that are just very long stretches of straight, flat, boring drive, like 455 and a half miles of Nebraska, for example. Very easy driving. But for somebody who's never been through like Wyoming and Nevada and stuff before, that is like Mario Kart brought to life, but without the turtle shells and stars and mushrooms and stuff, which would,
but
make
with
it
the power
fun and
slide.
terrifying. With the power slide for sure. Yeah, so highly recommend it if you need a thrill and have a week to burn, but at the same time, I don't actually recommend
You haven't
it.
even gone up into the foothills yet. Ooh, baby. Now do it. Now do it with a bicycler on your side and on the other side.
Oh, geez. There are some people doing some crazy things on pretty busy roads out here, so it's going to be an
Bicycle
adjustment
culture,
to say
baby.
the least. Yeah, no, it's alive and well. That is going to wrap things up for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We are back with you on Wednesday.